to this day, those are the best teams. They produce the best products. They have the best collaboration. They have the best accountability. They have the best vision of what the hell they're all doing, right? They all know what they're, God, it's just magical to put those teams together.
Was that magical? Was that just like this snowflake that appeared out of nowhere and we were lucky enough to be in it? Or could something like that happen? And I said, absolutely, it can happen again, but it requires this, and this.
That's the way of things. It's the Young Bucks.
Who's next? Who's the next leadership podcast? Who's going to replace the Metacast?
That's true. Who's going to step on our? Who's going to squish us like the bugs we are? Entry music. Da, 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 da. It's the Bob and Josh Show.
As a leader, there are choices you have to make, and some of them are really foundational. Some of them affect the daily lives of your people. One of those, the one we're going to talk about today, is to office or not to office. This is a thing that I've been having an argument with myself for nigh on 15 years now. When I started to really hire, pre-COVID, of course, before remote was the norm, I started to question, gosh, can I really build the absolute best team in the universe if my hiring radius is like 30 miles? Yes, no, maybe. Or should I cast this massive net and hire globally and get the best talent from across the universe? Which one is going to be better? And I would have these debates with myself about, well, the talent pool is greater, so therefore the team should be better. But then you have the inherent challenges of working remotely. And before COVID, working remotely was one of those things that was just harder and people did less of, so we weren't as good at it. Then COVID happened, and we were forced to get better at it. Now, the question that I was talking to Bob pre-hit the record button was, if you were to start from scratch and you were to start to hire your first person, there's a decision that you need to make. How wide is the radius of my hiring search? Because you start to establish in that moment, knowingly or unknowingly, that you are an in-office company or a remote company or maybe some combo thereof. And so that's a challenge for leaders for lots of reasons. Bob has some interesting theories, not interesting theories, I believe they're accurate, about what drives various leaders to make choices. So that's what today is about the decision that you need to make, the pros and cons of both sides, because I believe there are pros and cons of both sides, on in-office versus remote. So there we go. That's what we're going to do today. Robert, what do you have for me?
I may be changing my mind or not, but as you were talking, and I was reviewing my history, and I was reviewing my thoughts around this, building teams. And that's when I was anchoring on your idea. If I'm building an organization today, me, and I'm deciding and I'm paying for it, let's say I'm a CEO, but I'm paying for it, then what would I would have a small radius. I would look at North Carolina, this area. And initially I would look around and I'm like, we have some fine technologists in our pool. We have fine universities in our pool. And so I would build locally. If I had some unicorn or boutique people that I needed, and I couldn't find them locally, or even if I knew I couldn't find them, I wouldn't even waste time looking. I would probably build a hybrid organization over time. I would start hiring locally. My first agile team, if it was an app development kind of thing, would be here. If I hired an architect, I would want them. That's a specialty. It depends. If I could find a good architect here, I might do that. So there's this, depending on the type of role. I would want product to be here, right? I would want technology leadership to be here as much as possible. Product leadership to be here. Some foundational things like HR, legal, sort of sales. I don't know about sales. I would say here. And I would start growing the company here. Now, over time, as I scaled, then I think the company would distribute. when I was looking for example, Josh, if I needed, it's nice to develop technology teams, like call them Scrum teams, to have teams in different areas working on different areas of the product. It's sort of a backup. Um, if we lose power here, they're up. You can have that sort of. There used to be this notion of chasing the sun or something, where
Yeah.
you could be working.
You'd be working 24/7.
No, that well, no, but
Effectively, yeah.
effectively, right, and have coverage and things
Yeah.
like that. So ultimately, depending on the growth, I would be doing that. So that's my answer. That's not a lot. I would start locally.
Yeah, one of the things that I wrestle with, and maybe I overemphasize this, but early, again, this is all pre-COVID debates I would have with myself. COVID changed things because we just got better at it. But one of the things that I latched on, there were various companies that had gone remote before that was the norm. And they were very open and published a ton of great content about their journey and what was working and what wasn't. And again, I'll actually get to what I'm trying to say. One of the things I latched onto was it can't be a situation where there's an unfair advantage to being in the office versus not, because that just creates friction and dissent and confusion and lack of clarity. And I have felt this.
What do you mean by that unfair?
Yeah.
Explain the unfair advantage.
Early in the COVID days, or actually a little bit pre-COVID. So I had worked places where we acquired a bunch of different companies. And so now the team originally worked all in one spot, and then they acquired companies. So now there's people from here and people from there, and they're working remotely. And now all of a sudden we have members of teams that aren't in the location. One of the major failures that people had to get over early was, if we're in a conference room and we dial in to get that one person that's not physically there on our team, and you're in a conference room and the phone's crappy and they can't really hear anything. It's hard for them to jump in the conversation.
I got you.
All of those things happen. Now, again, with COVID and the advent of Zoom becoming the norm, and I have been places where we chose to dial in from everybody's seat, even though we were all in the same place, because we had somebody else that was out there, and that was the only way to give them equal footing to where they felt like they could actually jump in and be a part of the conversation. Because when you're the one person that's not in the conference room and people just start talking and they're in a groove because they're looking at each other, they're picking up the cues of when they stop talking versus when it's time for them to start talking, all of those cues can't be done. So again, Zoom and Google Meets and Microsoft Teams and all those things have helped make that better, but there's still a challenge there. And there are many times where there's just casual conversations that happen as you're going to the water cooler or the restroom or to lunch or whatever, that if you're not physically there, you're automatically excluded. So I have struggled with the hybrid model, because what I worry about is you start to develop this home base that has a natural advantage, and then everybody else feels kind of left out. So that doesn't mean it can't happen. It just would take a lot of effort. So those are things that I've wrestled with over the years, as I have yet to draw a definitive line in the sand in how Josh would do this.
I mean, I think you just have to work hard at facilitation. Like a good Scrum Master could help make sure the team and that person, even if there's technology glitches, maybe it's rescheduling or whatever, or using a different technology, but we want you connected. So we have to figure out how to do that. I guess as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, I have Metacasters, I have a bias. It goes, and this is, you're probably all going to judge me, and I don't really care, and call me a dinosaur, and I don't care. But I have this extreme programming bias. And that bias is teams need to be together, and they need to collaborate, and face-to-face trumps not face-to-face, right? Face-to-face and coding in a room, like having people like when I was at Eye Contact, it was pods. putting teams in a pod. They could see each other, talk to each other. They pivot their chairs around. There were whiteboards there for communication, and there's all this other stuff. Miro, there's tools up the wazoo, but I wanted passionate face-to-face communication. We did have rooms where if you wanted to talk to someone who wasn't, remote member, you could do that. But even then, you were trying to augment it with face-to-face, get their face in the room with the rest of the team. That's my bias, and that's driven from, I think, to this day, those are the best teams. They produce the best products. They have the best collaboration. They have the best accountability. They have the best vision of what the hell they're all doing. Right? They all know what they're. God, it's just magical to put those teams together. And then something happened. And again, I'm not, Josh. You're more familiar with today's modern teams than I am, right? Like what they're doing. I've lost the way in the last 5 or 10 years. I understand COVID and things. But the point is, I think we've devalued that. Not just, I mean, team members want to be remote. Well, I can, and they fight it. I don't want my cameras on, etc. Right? I can be independent. The tools are there. I get all of that. But I think the magic is gone. And so it's not an HR decision. It's not a financial, it's not a rental the building decision. It's if we're in innovative product, if your business is trying to create innovative products, then I think these collaborative teams are the answer. Now, the hybrid for me goes back to, if I'm scaling, I'm not afraid of having remote teams. I would want them operating that way, in that same way as those high performance teams, and being together and then connecting them to each other. I'm not afraid of remote team members, but we want to amplify. It's like the lone wolf is not. I don't want any lone wolves. So slap me around and judge me, because I know this might be an old-fashioned model.
I am your wingman on this. And one of the points that you made before we started officially recording the episode was that there are two main drivers that can be reasons why you choose to go in office. Can you talk through that? Because I think they're absolutely right. And you and I index on one of them and not the other. So we get excited and fired up about what can happen when we index on what you're going to talk about here. So
Metacasters, we were trying to say like driving forces, and for in office, and loss. So why would you be together and loss? One of them is control. And I think it's a negative thing. As a leader, I want to control people. I don't trust you. I don't trust that you're working hard enough, etc. A project management mindset, etc. And I'm putting the elephant right on the table, Metacasters, whether you like it or not. If you disagree with me, I don't care, right? It's leadership control. And when you're distributed around the place and you're zooming in, I don't have control over you. And I feel uneasy. And if there's economic pressure, layoffs and things like it gets worse. My lack of trust increases. If there's VUCA, if things are volatile, if they're ambiguous, it's the same thing. I want more control of you, right? As I get pressed with business dynamics or economics dynamics. So that's the negative thing. The positive thing for me is innovation, right? I'm not a control guy. I don't care. I mean, I like to see people, but the reason I get excited about seeing people is they're innovating, they're working together. That's what excites me. As I may be walking around, and the other cloud then is innovation, and you lose that. I don't care what anyone says. When you distribute folks around, when someone is trying to dial in and they shut down, when to Josh's point, when the home base is much more powerful than the remote base, and these folks don't feel heard, so they start shutting down. That, to me, that undermines innovation. I'm not getting those voices in play. They don't know the part that they're playing. They're not as excited as the local teams, etc. So now the money to fly people together, or to train or whatever, if you have a remote teams, or the money to pay for an office. Yes, the funding is an issue, but I think there are these two big cloud dynamics we were talking about. There's the innovation cloud and there's the control cloud, and there's tension in between them. The other final thing, and I'll shut up and let Josh talk, is today I think the power cloud is winning out
The
in
control
industry.
cloud.
The control cloud
Yeah.
is winning. It just wins. It seems to,
Yeah.
particularly now, they're in. So what is it? It's a buyer's market, and
Oh yeah.
the buyers are the control cloud. So if anything, that cloud's getting bigger. And I actually think right now innovation is reducing, and a lot of people are thinking that AI is going to put air in the innovation bubble, and I don't buy that.
Yeah.
Josh, what you
So
got?
I align with you, Bob, because I value innovation. And why I think I align with you is my hiring model is I've had the most success. My teams have been the most impactful when I hire a collection of what I call collaborative problem solvers.
Yeah,
People that are great at solving problems and people that are great at not only solving problems, but solving problems with others when they get really nasty and hard and you're stuck and you bounce ideas off of each other. And the remote nature that can still be done, but there's more natural friction. Whereas if we're all in the same room at a whiteboard, those ideas have less pipes to flow through, right? And things just slow down. And people do a great job of wrestling with it. But to Bob's point, everything is just a little bit harder. And one of the challenges that I see as a guy that's on the side of I think working in the office would actually be better, that automatically gets aligned with the control side of, oh, I don't want to be forced to drive into the office. I am losing 2 hours a day driving to and fro, right? And is that really worth it? In theory, you would get 2 extra hours of Josh because he's not driving or commuting or in a train or whatever it is, a bus, whatever, however you get to and fro, that is lost time. And so you get more of me because I don't have to do all of that. So even though that might be true, the inherent friction of communication and collaboration, I believe, offsets that to where I'm starting to develop a stronger opinion now as we talk through this, which is why I wanted to talk through it. I think I would index towards let's work in a place, even if we're there fewer hours,
yes.
because people have to travel and go to lunch and do all that stuff. They can't walk and go make a peanut butter jelly and be back in their seat in 5 minutes.
But
I would bet on that team that's in one room together. I would bet on them building a better product.
but it's the team. It's what we're talking about. As you were talking, I was thinking individual. So who's more important? The individual or the team? I remember 20 plus years ago at EMC, we were having like stand up meetings with folks in India. And I would schlep into the office. This was before I got up so early. So I would schlep into the office at like 7 a.m. to participate in a team stand up as a scrum master.
Right.
The reason I did that, I wasn't whining in my head or complaining. I didn't but I was like, I need to be there for the team. It's a team responsibility. I'm accountable to my team. There's a mindset of team. I think we've lost that along the way. There's like teams is secondary nowadays in many cases, and an individual is primary. And in my mind, I back to those teams, there was an identity of the team. There was a presence, there was a function and a focus of the team. That's what I'm, and that's where the power and the innovation came from, of juicing up the teams. And so I think there's a it's not selfish. You're focusing on individual like hours and I can be this. Stop that. It's what can we do as a team? And if it means driving to an hour, then drive an hour. Or quit and go somewhere else. But commit to what you're doing, because it's that team level commitment, and we had that. So it's almost like not off. It is office versus non-office, but it's to me, it's like collaborative entity, collaborative identity. It's like get shit. God, there's something magical about those. You've seen those teams, Josh, and I've seen,
Hmm.
and that's the reason I'm harping about it as a leader, is those teams get shit done. They can be amazing. But I don't see that many of those teams like that.
It is capable. It is possible. I have seen it. It is inherently more rare because of the effort required to remove the friction. You know, one of the things that I try to create, I am very active in Slack for a reason, because I'm trying to create the natural conversation that happens in those pods. So there's a group of 6 developers sitting next to each other, and they might have their headphones on, but there's stuff that happens. There's dialogue that happens. Somebody's
Right.
frustrated about a thing. Somebody hears it. They just kind of roll over and help somebody. That doesn't happen in a remote setting because it's just harder. And usually it's interesting. Our willingness to distract somebody remotely goes way down versus
Yeah.
if you and I are working in a pod, I might turn around, hey, Bob, and I'm sorry, Bob, I know you're doing a thing, but then you're ready to help me and we're off and going and we solve a thing versus now, hey, are you free? Can I schedule time on your calendar? Can I do all? So you have to start to schedule collaboration versus it happening naturally,
Yep.
inherently. If we were just in a physical room together, it happens. Is it more destructive? Various things about, mental churn of I'm working on this, now I have to work on this and all these different things. There's a little bit of that, but we're kind of optimized for that. And we've worked that way for decades and we're trying to do it, but I am,
Well,
I am continually debating this with myself.
but we're gonna. I mean, we're leading. Go back to the original premise. Money out of our pocket. We're building it. How do you build it? I'm sharing how I build it. I'm not
Yeah.
Metacasters. I'm not actually trying to convince you. I don't care if you agree with me or not. This is how we're going to do it. Why? Because I think this is the most powerful model for in product development teams. Is it challenging in some ways? Absolutely. Integrating other teams is challenging, but that's it. I remember years ago, Josh, years ago, I had a team in Richmond, Virginia, I think, and a team here locally in RTP or Atlanta. It was Atlanta, I think. What it doesn't matter. And they were doing some collaborative work across the two teams. So they had code base A, code base B. There were some dependencies. And the weird thing I did is I said, let's create a conference call. So we had a conference phone. This is a conference phone, and I'm like, we're going to keep it up 12 hours a day. Okay. And we're going to keep the conference up and between these two teams. And what happened is they started, that tension, you could sense someone in Raleigh would like turn around in their chair. It's like, hold it a second. What are you guys talking about? I heard something that I want to, and it simulated. It was not exactly the same thing,
Yeah.
but it simulated collaborative tension, and it was freaking awesome. And it was a stupid technology decision, but I noticed over time that it almost removed the distance,
Yeah.
and it increased, and again, face to face or face to phone collaboration, which was exactly what we want. And they used it for meetings and things. So there was the planned interaction, but there was also the unexpected. Like if you were in a pod and you would turn to someone, a tester yelps.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
A tester yelps, and they're not entering a bug. And I'm like, what? I just gave you a handoff. What the hell's going on? I released something to you. Let's talk about it. There's this immediate thing, and then everyone else hears the yelp. Oh, and if Bob doesn't turn around, some Josh slaps me in the head and says, "That's your code. Get over there." It creates this. If we create now, leaders have to create that bubble of what defining the culture and the level of importance and the level of interaction. So it doesn't, the magic is setting the teams up that way, but it's also, I think, it requires like a leadership dynamic. Convincing people, I don't care. I'm not micromanaging you. If you need to go home and remotely connect, do that. But your team and collaboration is our prime directive, and innovation is our prime directive.
Yeah, I guess the decision I would make is groups that need to work together on the regular and are dependent on each other. You are going to get increased value over time by having them physically located next to each other. That doesn't mean that every department has to be in the same spot, but to co-locate people that spend their days working on similar things that can become dependent on each other, or they can accelerate each other, having them in a physical space, the value there is definitely a difference maker. Now, one of the challenges that taking a stance like that has is that most of the time when people are forced to go back to office, or you hear about companies going back to office, it is a control power play. So there's that natural risk of people start to question, like, wait a minute, why are we doing this? Why are we, like, what do you, come on now. I know
Well,
the
that's the
boss is
leader.
the
That's
boss
the
is going to boss
leadership.
things, right? So
I
that's
think
a
that's the
challenge.
leadership part. Is how do we? It's not even convince. We are not. So if we're into power, we're not going to get the innovation. But if we lean into supportive leadership guide, then we're looking for collaboration. We're looking for tension. We're looking for, sort of high energy decision making, and we're participating in that. And high accountability, high delivery, right? High ownership by the team to get to these deliverable goals or whatever that we have. But so the leadership has to be there, has to have that mindset. I'll be has to have a Josh or a Bob mindset to some degree to do that. If it's just control, then I don't really. Again, you can
Yeah.
do whatever you want. Do whatever. You're a control. I know it's judgmental, but you're a control freak. So own it. But there's tension between those two things. I that's the best deliverable models I've seen. I don't have enough in the trenches context, right? I've been out of leading teams for 10 years. I talk to a lot of people. I think we've lost that,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think COVID and remote, etc. Oh, and we'll use Slack and all of the tools that have come in. I actually think from a macro perspective, they've undermined the dynamics that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge, is a really great leader maximizes innovation and can do it with limited light control, right?
Yeah.
As you think about really empowering people, you give them the ownership to make decisions. When you do that and you provide them with the environment to maximize the collaboration, to create the innovation that is required to dominate a market, then you can do that. But that requires really great leadership, and that's rare, unfortunately.
And going back to Scrum, I mean, product owners in those models, product owners to me are these envision folks, these visionators, these customer activators. So it's not just the leader; it's the lead. It's not just, to me, product is part of the team,
Right.
and they're activating the team. So again, we need to hire great product owners. And time again, I hear people talking about, I have a remote product owner, and I have a really hard time. I can you give user stories to the team, but they're not energized. They're not challenging me. We're not co-creating things, and they don't like that. It's because you're remote. You need, if you're a product owner, be there in the team, and be really active with the team. So again, there's a nature of product ownership. In our pods, product owners. So again, just an example, at iContact, the product owners had two desks. They had a product owner area desk, and they had a desk chair with the team, every product owner. And we invited them to spend as much time as possible with the team. They probably spent 60% of their time in the team. And again, it's the same thing. The Yelp. Someone gets a user story and is coding. It's like, Yelp, that's a stupid idea. Or the architecture doesn't support that. Damn it. Right? The product owner's right there. Come on over. Let's talk about that. Oh, I don't care about the architecture. We have to implement that. Oh, but and we get those interactions.
Yeah,
How do you go ahead?
even small things. So one of the things that we did at the Dude was we had like 7 teams in this giant room, and everybody had their scrum boards on wheels. And
Yeah.
whenever a story was closed, someone was designated to physically go move the sticky from column wherever it was to column done. And it became the norm that as soon as somebody noticed that happening, the room started clapping, because we wanted to celebrate those little victories along the way, because we were rebuilding this massive thing and we needed those little wins throughout the day. And that became a thing where that gave a little bit of juice to everybody.
Yeah.
They're like, oh man,
Yeah.
look at, like, we moved 9 cards this morning. Can you freaking
Correct.
believe that? And that gave people a little bit of extra, that yes, there's Jira or GitHub or however you measure those things. And yes, you can put clap emojis on things and do all that stuff, but it doesn't translate as effectively as that in the real world collaboration, emotional generation that I have been unable to find a way to replicate that. There are teams that work their freaking tail off and they get close. And maybe that's good enough for some people. But Bob and I believe, I'm putting words in your mouth, that there is a next level that can be achieved if
Yes.
that group is all in one spot.
Well, and the other thing is we've lost it. There's a scrum master locally here. He attends moose herds a lot. And he talks to me like I'm a dinosaur. He says, well, we have tools that can do all of that stuff. And I argue with him, but I think those mindsets have won. The distributed development, the COVID, I don't want to go back to the office of one. And again, part of it is power play things, but we've lost the innovation. If anyone has seen an extreme programming or an early scrum team kick ass, or a set of pods like Josh is describing, teams today are not at that level. And that level is looked at old-fashioned, archaic, right? We've advanced. And I'm arguing we've lost something there. And it goes back to get together, roll around sticky notes, draw on boards. Yes, have that backup teams, but face-to-face collaboration and innovation at a team level, at an organizational team level, trumps everything else. And I'm not going to be convinced otherwise at all. And I think we've lost something. I'd love teams to practice. I'd love it if we could package a boot camp and give people 3 iterations to experience what we're talking about. I've actually done, Josh, you and I don't know if you remember, but when we were at Teradata, there was a conference room, if I remember correctly, that we turned into a freaking like a boot camp room or something like that. Because we were in cubes, and we created somewhere along the line. We moved PCs into this room so that people could experience what we're talking about, because they were in cubes and they weren't collaborating. And I think some magic happened in that room.
Mm-hmm.
Then it carried out. It actually carried out culturally, because we couldn't keep the people in there, but experiencing it then gave them that knowledge to then carry it out into the cube so that they could figure out, how do we replicate that?
Not too long after that was when I started a bit of an office space revolution where I got the drill out and I started removing cube walls. And I was the first one to do that. Then somebody else did it, and the communication went up. And surprise, surprise, those teams delivered more value, and they were happier.
Yes.
So forget delivering more value. They were happier. One of the things I was thinking about is, like, for those of you that made it here and you're like, yeah, Josh, you know what? That sounds great. That sounds cool, but like I don't want to drive. I understand. I've been working remotely for 8-ish years. And I would do the drive. I would do it because I would be more proud of what we could create together in that setting. And I understand. And I understand the drive sucks and the commute and traffic and all of that. Okay, cool. But I would bet your general enthusiasm, happiness, and pride would go up if you were on one of those teams that really lived that. And I think that's part of the problem is there's many places that pretended that's what they were about, but
Right.
but
Right.
control snuck in. But if you had the opportunity, like Bob talked about, to really experience one of those really foundationally, functionally great teams, you would really struggle to walk away from that. And I've had people that have reached out to me that worked with me at the Dude when we really did build something special. And I've been asked the question of, I've never, Josh, I've never been able to find another place like what we had at the Dude.
Exactly.
Was that a one-off? Was that magical? Was that just like this like snowflake that appeared out of nowhere and we were lucky enough to be in it? Or could something like that happen? And I said, absolutely, it can happen again, but it requires this, and this. And a true empowerment, a true drive for teamwork, all of those things that we've talked about, that's what is required. And that is unfortunately uncommon. And that's what Bob and I try to make more common with all the content that we create. And this is one of those things that it now has become the rarity. And maybe we can inspire some others to really build some great organizations and teams.
It's reproducible, everyone. I mean, again, it's difficult, obviously, for many organizations. But again, and I don't think it's the team. I think my experience is, the team is not the bigger challenge. Right. It's the leadership is the bigger challenge. Setting the ecosystem up, setting the right parameters for that. The other thing we didn't talk about, hiring the right people.
Yep.
Like when you're hiring people, explaining this is not a remote. If you're having a baby, if you're sick, whatever, yes, remote. We have wonderful remote capabilities. But when everything's okay, we want you working with your team. We want you in here face to face. Are you okay with that? Better yet, you know what? You can spend a half a day with your team. This is where we want to hire you, but why don't you spend a half a day? I'll give you free food or whatever I have to do, but hang out with your team and experience what a day in the life is or a half day in the life is. And no gamesmanship. This is how it's going to be. So then make your decision. And if you come here, great. We welcome you. But eyes wide open, you understand. If you don't, and if you don't like it, please don't accept the offer. Please. Because we're not bullshitting around. We're into collaboration. We're into teamwork. We're into egolessness we're into all voices. This is what we do around here. And that creates this magic. Josh, why don't we land this?
Yeah, Zeppelin. The question why I'm staring out the window now is, have I finally, after a decade and a half of arguing this, have I finally, through a discussion with Bob, landed on, when I make that choice, my choice would be, let's build a co-located team of collaborative problem solvers. And I think the answer is yes.
I'm there.
You're there? Oh, Bob's already there. Yeah.
And again, that's not myopic. I said it's a little hybridy, but it's team. We're centered on team. Yeah. We're centered on innovation. We're centered on collaboration. We're centered on getting shit done together, honoring things, right? Covering for one another. I know it sounds weird, but it's that football, right? It's do your job, but also we're a team.
Mm-hmm.
We don't throw anyone under the bus, right? If the quarterback has a bad day and we don't, it's not the quarterback's fault. It's us. And this is how leadership shows up. That's how I would want to create the organization. Not because, one, it's fun, it has joy, it has this stuff. It has joy, but it also, you can't just have joy. You got to deliver the goods, and it does both of those things.
Yep. Okay.
So, we done?
I think so.
Metacasters, consider this. Consider running the experiment. Right? We're challenging you. There's no if, there's no buts. There's no buts. This is the way. And we're telling you this is the way. So frickin' do it. From beautiful downtown Cary, North Carolina.
And beautiful downtown Fuquay Arena, North Carolina.
I'm Bob, centralized team Galen.
And I'm Josh. I'm almost actually there to make a decision, Anderson.
All right. Shake
and bake.
Take care, y'all.